Welcome to InnerTV. I'm your host, Althea Provost, and my guest today is Anneke Koreman, whose adventure novels explore time travel into important historic and esoteric chapters in our distant past. Her book trilogy, The Forbidden Relic, The Eye of Ra, and her latest, The Ringing Rocks of Atlantis, are written under her nom de plume, Jeanne d'Août. In this interview, we will be discussing Anneke's recent book, her experience with the documentary The Lost Relics, and the often misunderstood history and esoteric meaning of the pentagram, and more. Welcome, Anneke, to InnerTV.
Thank you very much for having me. It's beautiful.
Let's start with the Ringing Rocks of Atlantis. Why Atlantis? Why now?
There is something about this story that has a little bit of a comical twist. A couple of years ago, I started writing the book, but I didn't really know where I wanted to go. So I started writing about the Celts and the Druids, and I had already the first and the second chapter done. And then tragic things happened. My parents died, I got cancer, life happened, and, life stops actually, because you need to tend to it first. So for that reason, I didn't write for a couple of years. And then when I picked it up again, I knew I was going to have to go to the subject of Atlantis, because that was something that was calling me. And last year, I was in the Mediterranean with a group tour, and everything came to me. Everything inspired me. So over this past winter, I was able to write the book, and I wrote it very, very smoothly. So probably now was the time.
Indeed. This adventure thriller presents many a character, and I'd like you to describe 3 words for the character Elan. What would those 3 words be?
Elan would be ancient, she would be eternal, and she would be wise.
Any adventurer who follows the Starseed channel, you would probably identify with Elan in some way. She is from a priestess lineage. She's living at a time when the matriarchal society is ending, about 525 BC. Why did you create this character?
Because it is so important for us to understand our history, and because we are facing similar things like cataclysms, disaster, but also capitalism. There is a system in the world that has started somewhere, and it started at the beginning of the money society where everybody could get rich. And it's okay to be rich as long as you tend to the others and the world around you. And it started a society of greed, and this already happened in the 6th century BC. And I think it is important for us to get back to that era and understand where it began and what was before, and that was a utopia. The world before money was a utopia. It was much more imbalanced. There was this, what you already said, the matriarch. The women ruled with their heads rather than men would with their swords, and the world was more imbalanced and more about community.
I just would like to emphasize how Elan impacted me. I am familiar with the matriarchal culture, having studied and traveled to ancient sites. But what made her tick for me was she seemed to understand that we were in a changeover from matriarchal to patriarchal, and she was brave enough to go on an adventure that could possibly lead to death or more tragedy in her life. So she left her clan, her group, her family, and her role to seek an adventure. What makes Elan's character tick?
Well, she was based on a very dear friend of mine called Eve Marie Roy, who is actually Elan in this lifetime. And she inspired me because she is a sound maker. She is a sound bringer. And she knows that everything is music, everything is sound, and that with creating sound, you can heal. So coming from that knowing Eve Marie Roy, I managed to create Elan. And Elan, sort of, after I gave birth to Elan, she grabbed the story. She moved my hands. She was the one writing the story.
Oh, I felt that, Anneke. I truly did.
Yeah, she's an amazing, how do you call that, a muse. She was an amazing muse, because this is the time where we are beginning to actually understand sound, matrix, oneness.
I agree with that. If you visit ancient sites and you pay attention long enough or connect with them deep enough, you begin to understand that sound is the key component to these sites. They're tuned to 111 hertz, like in Malta at the Hypogeum, in other sites in Italy. You begin to understand, even Stonehenge, that the rocks sing. The Ringing Rocks of Atlantis. What is the significance of the title?
It is because, in the end, it is all about the sound, and it is all about Atlantis. It's about something that is inside of us, and it is, I call it the seeker, and the seeker is trying to find the snitch, if you like. And the snitch is that golden little ball from the Harry Potter series, of course, but you want that, and that is your goal, your destiny. And it is also at the same time inside of you as your divine spark. And your divine spark has this link to the divineness, the all, if you like. And it is your destiny. So like a river, you have to flow towards your destiny. So you get all those adventures meandering through the valleys and around the mountains, around the rocky parts of the river, and you finally get to the lake or the sea or the ocean where you're supposed to go to, and to go with the flow. And Elan was really going with the flow. She followed the snitch.
She did, and through intonation and sound, she infuses the rock with enchanted melodies, affecting that electromagnetic field. Share with our audience the response nature provides when Elan sings to the rocks.
I think the essence around you, the healing, it makes you one with the tetragrammaton, with the name of God, the sound of God, the first word, which is still ringing. That first word hasn't stopped yet, or we would have not been here, nothing would have been here. So we're still living inside the first word. And to be able to tune into that first word is to go with that divine flow. And it is healing your body, but it is also healing the cracks in the earth and the wounds of the planet.
Oh, gorgeous. In the Ringing of the Rocks of Atlantis, you introduced the reader to Pythagoras. More importantly, the pentagram. Please share with us how you feel this symbol is misunderstood.
Yes, the symbol, when people think of the pentagram, they immediately think of the occult. And of course, it has nothing to do with the darker magic. It has something to do with Pythagoras, a 6th century BC philosopher in Greece. And he was a philosopher that found out that the world is not about 4 elements. It's actually about 5 elements. It's earth, water, fire, and air as we know it, and spirit, which is the 5th element, which he put on top as a crown. And the 5-pointed star became the symbol for the students of Pythagoras.
In chapter 17, you quote Pythagoras. You say the pentagram represents not only the number 5, but also life, power, and invulnerability, consisting of the total sum of the 4 earthly elements plus spirit. It became a sacred universal symbol of the holy covenant between God and the living material world. Actually, that wasn't Pythagoras. That was someone speaking about Pythagoras. So
yes.
Again, you're showing that the symbol is linking the divine to matter, correct?
Yes, there is this sacred covenant that we have with God. Because in the Western world especially, we are looking at God as something outside of us. And of course, spiritualists are beginning to realize that there is nothing outside of us. We are inside God, and God is inside us. It's an inner and an outer situation, and an above and a below situation. So there is no distance or gap anywhere in between us and God. And to be able to understand that, the pentagram helps when you meditate on this, because you are a soul and you have a body. So when you think of your I, your me, as your soul, I am the soul and I have a body, then you are beginning to be a different person, I think, because then you think from your soul memory, from your soul teachings, and you are able to overcome more in your life, physical challenges and life challenges. And I think that's part of the Hermetic teaching.
The pentagram is often mistaken as the seal of Solomon. Is that correct?
Yes. Oh, I see it all the time in documentaries, and I think, oh no, the seal of Solomon is a six-pointed star. And it refers to as above, so below, intertwined, So you have two different pyramids, and one is up and the other one is down, and then they are
tetrahedron. The star tetrahedron, yes.
Yeah. So it's the seal of Solomon is, of course, referring also very, very much to the Kabbalah, the Zohar, the Jewish mysticism. And Jewish mysticism was at that time the esoteric part of Judaism. And Judaism, of course, is also very orthodox. It can be very orthodox, very black and white. But there is a group of spiritualists who study the Kabbalah, the Zohar, and they are the esoteric part of Judaism. And it is very important for us to be able to understand what went on in the Bible, because we all are familiar in the Western world, most of us anyway, with Christianity, with the Bible, with the Old Testament. We don't understand it because it has come, those writings, from at least 2,000 years ago and older, maybe 2,600 years ago, when they started to write up what they remembered after they were caught and with the Babylonian exile, and starting to write down what the stories were. And so the Bible isn't that old, and it's from memory, and they may have even made a couple of mistakes in it. But what is important is that it is all about the Jewish mysticism that is inside that book. And to be able to fully understand that, we must understand the Kabbalah.
Well, that might be another discussion, but we can say that the pentagram is used throughout southern France and northern Spain. I mean, it is a symbol that appears on the walls, whether it's in a carving, like in the Cathar initiation caves, which you actually took a group to for the documentary, The Lost Relics.
Yes, Lost Relics of the Knights Templar. This was recorded last year in September, and it's now running in Europe, and it will soon go to the States. We don't know the date yet, but it's the most popular show on History Channel in the UK.
Why did you take that group to the Cathar cave?
As we work on demand, so I take people where they want to go. This particular episode was more about Otto Rahn and the Nazis and the Grail and the Cathars, and they didn't have time to put everything in. So the only thing that was left in the documentary when shown on TV was when we visited the Bethlehem cave. And this cave has a natural pentacle, which means that it's not carved out, it's natural. And it was used by Rosicrucians as an initiation cave. And the Rosicrucians, especially the Golden Rosicrucians, they say that the Cathars used the caves and the little tiny corridors through the mountain as a sort of initiation process. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I do know that the pentacle, as you see it in churches and in windows and everywhere, is because of the Benedictines. The Benedictines followed the rule of Pythagoras. They were exactly that. And in the early centuries, from 800 to 1100, and I'm talking AD, this is a group of monks that spread out through southern France, northern Spain, and were immensely popular because of their society. They had balance, they had peace, they produced lots of food, they kept the peace when people were trying to go to war, and they managed to stop war a lot. So the Benedictines were very, very successful, and they used the pentacle or the pentagram in their windows, in their churches. This was only because they followed the way of Pythagoras, and they believed in that spark that is inside of us, the light in the world.
To quote Pythagoras, he says, "There is a geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres." I went to the Bethlehem cave. I was guided through synchronicity and spiritual flow to that cave in Musat, southern France. And I stood in that pentagram, and in a synchronistic moment, as I closed my eyes, I went through like what I call a death initiation. It's very similar to the energies that I felt at another cave in Peru. And what happened was my third eye began sending or coming towards my third eye, or eye going towards it. I couldn't really tell you. It happened in a split second. All these sacred geometry symbols just kept flashing through, so much so that I couldn't lock onto one or read one. After that time, it shaped the way I see. I felt deep in my heart at that time, and still do, that those caves were used for initiation with the Cathars, and the Cathars probably understood what the pentagram meant.
I think so too, because the Cathars were a group of Christians who followed the old Christianity, so the Christianity before Constantine the Great. And this is the Christianity also called Gnosis. The Gnostic people, who a lot of people think I only know agnost, which is atheist-like, but Gnostic people follow the early Christianity in the first centuries, as taught by Jesus and his followers. This ancient Christianity, they used so much of Pythagoras. It's really surprising. So now you have the ancient Egyptian magic, you have Pythagoras, you have Jesus, and you have the Benedictines. And so it found its way in our modern days, in our time. And this is amazing. And when the Cathars, who were also Gnostic, probably they felt the same way. They also followed the ways of Pythagoras, which is the way of Jesus. It's all about inner calm and about finding peace, not having possessions so that it cannot be taken from you, and to be in your own identity, to drop ego, all those things that Pythagoras was teaching, including the sacred geometry, the humming, the sound, the numbers, everything to make you understand what the universe is and what the origin of the universe is, which is the Genesis, which is actually a misspelling of gnosis. And it means knowledge of the beginning of time.
For our readers who don't know, there's 3 caves in Usat, France, and they were 3 initiations. And I don't know how the Cathars went through their initiation process, but I did travel to the museum in a different area of France in a subsequent trip, and they spoke to bread. Can you speak about that?
Bless the bread, which is what they did. You speak a sacred chant or a sacred text to an object, which in that case was bread. And by blessing the bread, you are enabling the bread to feed you in a much deeper way, and to also feed spiritually those who are hungry and aren't present to share the meal. It's also present in Rosicrucianism, by the way, which is interesting.
How so?
Well, when we have a meal, we put our hands above the meal and then we bless it, and then we have a certain text, which is probably very similar to the Cathars. I don't have it here. I don't know it from memory, but there is a certain text you can teach yourself to say when you have every meal, when you use a meal. So the moment that you do that, you bless your food, you make it vibrate in such a way that it fills you in a more deeper way, in a much more esoteric way, a spiritual way. I don't know how to explain this. To make it last on a spiritual level, to feed the hungry that aren't there. So it's very, very much alike. And the chanting, it reminds me of the Hebrew and Hebrew magic and Egyptian magic, which was also intonations and the saying of words, certain words and certain heights, or the intonations of sounds like aum or rama. All those things, they influence the world around you, and especially in your immediate surroundings. So you can actually see the water. If you hold a glass of water in front of you and you do an intonation above it, you can see that it trembles because of the vibration of your voice.
Hebrew fire letters, Egyptian magic, those are things that are outside my scope of memory, but I do, in this lifetime, have Hawaiian chants that I use for water to work with the elements, and I've watched the water shift and change and sparkle or affect earth, or affect weather patterns, because I'm using sacred sounds taught to me. And very similar to that, I learned when I was with the Kogis up in Colombia in their sacred mountain, certain sacred names, when they named a mountain, like Mount Everest, they would never say that out loud because it is a very sacred name. It's like you're not naming a thing, you're naming a living being.
This is true. This is exactly what is happening with the name of God, which is in Judaism, it's never pronounced. The only word that you sometimes pronounce would be Yahweh or Jehovah, but that is depending on how you learn to pronounce the word. But it's Yod-Vahi, Vahi, or something like that. But those four letters form the tetragrammaton, and in it has the seed of life.
The building blocks of matter.
Yes, exactly. So that is the word. And if you go to the Gospel of John, which brings us back to the Cathars, who refused to read any other gospel than the Gospel of John. And in the beginning, there was the Word. That is the first bit of the Gospel of John, St. John. So it is incredibly amazing how Jewish mysticism, Egyptian magic, the chanting, everything has remained in our society. You have the chanting monks in the churches, because they need a certain space where they can sing. So you have the choir, which is built to certain building requirements. So you can chant there. Sound is everywhere, all the time.
So it harmonizes, it enhances the frequency.
Exactly. They are now using it to see how plants behave when you play hard rock or you play classical music, and then the plant grows much better with classical music than with hard rock.
They grow with the harmonic resonance, don't they? The organic living light. Let me ask you something. Did the Cathars, in your opinion, have the Book of Love?
There's no proof anywhere, but a Book of Love is probably the Book of John, St. John.
Interesting. Very interesting.
There is one thing that I would like to share, and it is an idea that I have. I cannot prove it, but I have a feeling that when Jesus said to St. Peter, "Why do you not want women to be part of our club. There's this the disciples were not all of the disciples were happy with Mary Magdalene, and she was one of Jesus' best students. And probably she was a teacher herself, and she was like Jesus' second half. And so Jesus found her valuable enough to be very close to her, and it evoked jealousy. So St. Peter, who loathed women, he did not think that they had the right to live. That is St. Peter for you. And St. Peter said to Jesus, like, I don't want her here. I don't want her inside our class. And then Jesus said, well, then I will make her a man. I think that is the birth of St. John the Beloved.
I could go in so many directions with this. But I'd like to, for those that don't know, I met Anneke on the road. She came to Starseed France Adventure and spoke to my group. But before that, what happens on the spiritual planes is that Spirit essentially brings certain people into my life. I will see them in my third eye. I'll reach out, or some type of synchronistic flow will happen. And one of those people happens to be you. If I need to have a historic background, someone who's well scholared without ego, here comes the great divine. You must call Anneke. you must reach out to her, because the Rosicrucians literally showed up. And I thought, okay, I'm now down the Rosicrucian path, and of course that brings me to you. You speak well, and I invite the audience to know more about Anneke. But before we close, I want to invite you into the hot seat. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Let me think here. Are there any secrets from this book that you can share with our Starseed audience now?
I think I can. Let me think. There is, of course, the secret of always following your heart, even if it brings you out of your comfort zone. Another secret is that there is a lot of the Freemasonry, Rosicrucian teachings, Hermetic teachings, Egyptian magic, Jewish mysticism in the book, woven through the story. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more in a very simplified way, because I'm trying to always simplify things, then I would certainly invite you to read the book. And also the other ones, which are also full of that. But the biggest secret of all is that we are all one. There is no space between us. Everything is connected. There is this amazing electromagnetic field in between us that connects us all. We can send thought waves to each other. We can send love, healing through the ether, as Pythagoras called it. And we're all connected. We're like in water, and we're all inside a giant fishbowl. And this is an amazing experience, because you can actually concentrate on somebody, hold that person, love that person, send light to that person, and make that person feel very, very well on that certain moment, without that person knowing you are actually thinking about them. So this is important. This is something that humanity has to try and master. We have to do good. We have to elevate the world. And we have to be able to understand that we can do this. This is not impossible. It's not magic. It's called magic, but it's not magic. This is just human beings in an elevated position who understand the secrets of life, and that everything is one.
Conscious creation at best.
Yes.
Thank you, Anneke.
You're very welcome.
If you'd like to know more about Anneke and her tours, her books, and her work that she's doing on the planet, please visit www.jeandeout.com. The links will be running across the screen and also in the text box below. And until next time, everyone, bye for now.